Okay, looks like we're live. Okay, hi everyone. This is really exciting. My name is Haley Melodonis. I'm the founder of Bubbl, which we're going to be talking about today. It's the community travel sharing platform for accommodation for events and vacations. And just before I introduce our first guest, this is making history because this is the inaugural Let's Bubbl, as what we've decided to call our live stream. What we're planning to do at Bubbl is do a weekly live stream with really interesting Bubbl leaders that are joining our platform and that are participating and going to be enjoying bubbles. We'll be interviewing people after they've bubbled and before they've bubbled. And for that reason, today I just wanted to firstly welcome every single person. Thank you so much for joining. I think we are recording this as well, and we'll probably post snippets from this on our social media at a later time. But what I wanted to talk about firstly was the fact that we've got a really special guest on today. His name is Dan Ellis. And what I love about Dan is that he has been both an operator, an entrepreneur, and an angel investor for many years. He's been based in Silicon Valley and now most recently moved to Austin. And we're going to talk to Dan a little bit about that. But a fun fact about how I know Dan is I was on a Shark Tank pitch session with Dan. He was one of the sharks. And I'm pleased to say he is a shark, but he wasn't that bad as a shark. So that was the funniest thing. He's actually a really great guy, really interesting. And you know what I love about Dan, he's, I think, a real true believer in founders and a real passionate person. That's what I've known from knowing him so far about founders and ideas and getting companies started and entrepreneurship. So I'm really excited to welcome Dan to our first ever Let's Bubbl live stream. Thank you so much, Dan. I don't know if you guys can clap. It's our new platform. So if you can't clap, that's fine. Welcome to you, Dan, and hello.
Hey, Haley, thank you so much. That was quite a flattering introduction. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to be on and helping you.
Fantastic. So I guess today, maybe what we'll do is we might start off with just a quick level set about Bubbl. I just realized that there might be some people here who don't know a lot about Bubbl. So I'm just going to do a minute on that. And then what I wanted to do is to ping over to Dan and for you to kind of share a bit with us your story. So just at the outset, because I just realized there might be some people on this call that don't know much about Bubbl at all. They might have been invited by other people. So a quick level set is that, so I'm the founder, and what we are creating at Bubbl is a social travel platform. And we're looking at the tech community right now as one of our leading first markets. And the reason for that is that there's actually a lot of people in what I'll call the tech community who already do Bubbl, i.e. already do shared housing for events and things. And just to give the level set, where I started Bubbl and why I started Bubbl was because I was running shared houses in Lake Tahoe. I confess, you can see in the background, that's not a green screen. That's actually me in Lake Tahoe at my cabin right now. I happen to be up here today and just do the quick, yep. It's not a very nice day, but anyway, skiing was good yesterday. And so, so I started this platform purely from my own selfish need to fulfill my vice of skiing. And I started looking at having a lot of people in the houses, and they loved it, but there wasn't a really easy way for me to organize it. And I found it really time consuming. And so a couple of years later of incubating it while I was working at Uber, I realized that maybe the time has come, post-COVID, everyone's getting out, everyone's seeing the value of connections. And so that led me to meeting Dan. And over the last, I'd say, a few weeks and months, we've been chatting backwards and forwards. And then Dan had this great idea about potentially building his own house for Startup Grind. And so, Dan, maybe just with that context in mind about Bubbl, would it be okay if you tell us just let's go into a little bit about your background and how we kind of, we'll lead this conversation as to how we arrived here today together.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for that, Haley. I love the Bubbl concept and what you're working on. I just want to say that I think it's really interesting and maybe an idea that its time has come. And so kind of with that in mind, just to back into my story a little bit, I originally hail from Canada. I came to the United States a little over 15 years ago as part of an expansion of my consulting organization that I had built. And I'd done that for about 15 years before I decided that I really wanted to pursue my passions and do a startup. And so myself and a co-founder that I had met in Houston came up with a really novel idea in the human resources technology space. And we first decided we were going to do it in Houston, but then we actually ended up in Silicon Valley pretty quickly after we kind of went out there, and we really couldn't unsee what we'd seen in terms of the network and the potential for startups to move fast. And do you think this was like really a time before a lot of other cities got their tech communities established? It was really like Silicon Valley or bust for us.
Right.
And so we went out there, and we kind of went through the whole venture meat grinder, I like to say.
Is that 2010? I'm just taking 15 years off today. Is that 2010?
Yeah, so that would have been in 2013
Oh,
when we ended up in Silicon Valley bootstrapping the startup. We basically built it from scratch, just started coding it in a co-working space off Market Street. And then we
cool.
ended up getting into a couple of accelerator programs, and like one thing kind of led to another, but we finally get the right introductions to some people that could basically help juice our executive team and eventually lead us to raise funds. And we raised quite a bit out of the gate. You could either call it like a big seed series or a small Series A. It was 8.5 million. A couple of institutional investors came in. And yeah, then it just sort of started a growth story where we were winning customers, and we had a flywheel for growth. We had gone through a couple of iterations of the product, and eventually it was acquired by Workday in 2018.
Congratulations. Can I ask you just quickly, like, kind of what did it do? What was it called and what did it do? Just for people
Yes.
they might have
Yeah.
heard.
So our startup was called Rally Team. And
Uh-huh.
you can think of it as really a platform where we created internal connections with inside a company. So you're obviously all used to LinkedIn. It's a very open network with people coming from all sorts of multidisciplinary areas across different companies. We wanted to sort of bring that and the concept of it juicing initiatives and creativity and additional work outside of the box thinking inside of companies. And so we brought this platform that would match people up with the right skill sets to work and initiatives that were happening at the company. So in this way, it was a way to sort of uncover your internal talent and help them mobilize across different units so that companies could make more use of their human capital. So it's a very novel idea, it's different, and it really required sort of a Silicon Valley eye and the types of investors that would see the potential for this coming into a company. And eventually that ended up being Workday. But along the way, I really got involved in angel investing as well, because, and this is sort of what's led me to my current role as a venture capital investor. I really got exposed to a whole pile of interesting founders along the way, and they were all working on amazing creative ideas. And I wanted to know, well, how could I be involved? And, this was when, angel investing hadn't taken off to quite the extent it has now. There were platforms that supported this, like AngelList, for example. And I was one of the very first people on that platform,
Wow.
writing and helping founders with many small checks, but kept that cadence, doing like 5 to 8 checks per year, I would say, right up until the pandemic. And then kind of realized valuations were going crazy in companies. Decided to sit that period out from angel investing. But on, the other side of COVID, that's where I started to get involved a little bit more with a family office, and has led to my role as an investor now at Sure Ventures. And, Sure Ventures, that's how we met. We're actively looking for companies, a lot of companies, especially in, that are AI focused, but both in B2B and consumer facing. And, we're writing checks to support the earliest part of their journey.
So, Dan, this is an incredible journey you've had in Silicon Valley, and I just want to cover a couple of things that I find interesting. So, and that might lead us to even where Bubbl's at today in terms of like filtering through noise, at least for what you're doing. So, interestingly, in 2013, this was was this a cloud? Was this in the cloud, by the way? Just curious, because cloud. It was in the cloud. You were building in the cloud.
Yeah, so software as a service company, all cloud native. Yeah.
Was that early days for cloud though? Back in
I wouldn't say it was early. It was already like a pretty well established amount of cloud companies. A lot of it was kind of like SaaS 2.0 at that point. So there was enough technological improvements in the interface, especially, that layer that made it a little bit more practical. But it was clear that, software companies or companies in general were moving towards the cloud. It was already pretty well established at that point.
Okay. Yeah. No, I only asked because I think about the environment back then and then the environment today. And, I guess where I'm leading to with this is that, back then, even the cost to bring a startup to market was really huge. And we all know that
Yeah.
last year in particular, even with AI, and I mean, me coming into this and what we're building,
Mm-hmm.
firstly, so when the cost goes down, entrants come in. So long story short, it's been a really interesting, I think, 10 to 15 years in the tech industry overall, because there's been an explosion of startups. Luckily, there's been an explosion of hubs for startups as well, all around the world. I actually, 2011, I was working out of that one in London, and I forget the name of it now, but it's the one that's around today. And there was Seed Camp and a couple of others. But it's interesting that, they've all grown massively in numbers. But but when you were kind of there, you kind of had to go to the Valley. Now it's kind of an explosion. But I'd almost argue, certainly as a founder, that, and I don't know how your view is as an investor, and maybe this will lead to why we're here today, is that it feels like there's a lot of noise, and how do you get through the cut through? I myself, I am an angel investor. I've done at least 4 angel investments when I was earning my nice Uber salary, my Intel salary. And, I'm getting hit up all the time for investments. I'm on pause right now because I'm raising for my own startup. But at the same time, I see that, and I see wonderful, amazing companies. So getting to moving forward, the concept of Bubbl, why are we here today, and why might you be kind of looking at Bubbl from an investor's viewpoint, or even just, a human viewpoint to use?
Yeah, well, I think kind of building on that a little bit, back when we went to Silicon Valley, and also moving from country to country, Canada, United States, establishing a network was hard. We could have really used a leg up in that sense. We did have our supporters, but I would say once we arrived in Silicon Valley, we were originally outsiders, and it took us a good year to establish network where it would make funding possible. Quality networking was challenging. Finding people to do business with as a newer company when I moved from Canada to Houston, it didn't necessarily have an established reputation or logos that the new customers would appreciate coming from a different market. And on the other side of that, I'm a person who's been to a lot of conferences, and maybe ready to conference differently, let's put it that way, and get a little bit more value out of the process than was previously possible. So in my mind, the entire point of a conference is to meet and interact, and I think this is the key thing. I can't be convinced it's about the content, because we literally have all the content ever that you could want already on YouTube. Hundreds of hours of that. So to go just to listen to speakers at a conference, I think you would be missing the point. If you want to meet people, you go to a conference. And to me, Bubbl really strengthens that value proposition. You can learn a lot about people by having morning coffee with them or breaking bread together. And I see this really as fundamentally what Bubbl is offering. So I love that idea, and I want to support it.
So Dan, you were sharing with me earlier today about, and I loved hearing this, it was kind of cool, your what you used to do back in the day. Because I think, when I started Bubbl, so first thing, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows, all I did was take a 50-year-old idea. So ski leasing, you can see how old this cabin is, right? This has been a ski lease for years. In fact, I get on the lift and people go, "Where's that cabin?" And I'm like, "Oh, tell them where it is." And they're like, "Oh yeah, 20 years ago, I was in that cabin, or I've been to a party in that cabin." It's so funny, right? Point being, so I took a 50-year-old idea and platformized it. I do give full credit to Americans for inventing this idea. I don't, having lived in Europe and Australia and Japan for that matter, I haven't seen it anywhere in the world, and give it to Americans and Canadians, almost Americans, to be so innovative as to come up with this. But you were telling me about what you used to do back in the day. You were tell me that again.
Well, I remember for the first kind of act on our time in Silicon Valley, we had an apartment that we rented out there. At the time, our wives were back in Houston, but knowing that we had an apartment and we were sort of at ground zero for all the tech, conferences were happening, think like Salesforce, the Dreamforce conference, for instance. We'd have people pile in from our network, across Canada and the United States. And then people would just be crashing on our floor because trying to find a place to stay in San Francisco, it's expensive. You could be sold out, or you might be really far away. And so for us, even like a floor and a blow up mattress seemed like luxurious by comparison. And so there were often like people that we knew a little bit. In some cases, I was meeting them for the first time, or my co-founder was meeting people on my network on the first time. But it really added to the whole experience from everyone, because you got to meet some like great founders, and they were scrappy like us. Not a lot of money to go around, so we had to figure out how to be creative.
Yep.
And this was just another manifestation of like how to keep costs down, how to be scrappy. And plus, it also gave us a chance to be with our peer group. And we could really riff about, what we were seeing and hearing in startups, what was working from a fundraising standpoint, what investors they were talking to, what were the cool things that they wanted to get out of the conference. And I thought it was so great to have sort of that instant network put together. And it made such a, you contrast that with the people you meet at a conference. Maybe you've got 5 minutes of stand-up time with them where you're going back and forth, and so much of the networking seems fruitless. The conversations are very high level, surface oriented. You can't really get to know people in that same amount of time. And you just kind of end up with a stack of business cards and LinkedIn follow-ups. Whereas everyone that came and crashed with us, like, we really got to know them. We stayed in touch, and the way I look at it, I mean, if you want to think about it through the lens of business, you get to know that person. It's going to be okay. They're going to refer people to you. And vice versa, you're able to give them relevant connections in the future. And so you end up with a network that knows each other and wants to deal with each other, rather than just random interactions that you have at a conference. So I really look at that as an upside to what you're offering with Bubbl.
So Dan, before we talk about your specific Bubbl, because I do want to share with everyone, and in a minute Alexis will show it. We have a value-based system. I haven't talked about this much. We're going to be talking about this more. But firstly, I'm an 8 times burner, so there's a bit of burner flavor in there, and there's a bit of like kind of teamwork stuff burn in. When I built Bubbl, definitely one of the most important values, apart from fun, by the way, is serendipity. Because what I found and saw in my bubbles over, all the people in all the years, over 8 years of running these houses. And I also ran heli ski trips before that, so when anyone says that, like, oh, rich people aren't going to do this, that's not true. Because, when you go heli skiing, you're in a little intimate private lodge. You have your own private room. You have a group co-living thing. And that is amazing networking that happens in a heli ski lodge, apart from the skiing. Because,
sure.
It was always fun. So I realized that Bubbl really appeals to people, honestly, of all levels. This is not a budget platform. This is a networking platform. But what I was going to say was, actually, I just lost my train of thought. Great. Okay.
Well, to add to that point, I would say there's an old adage that business is done in bars and golf courses.
Right.
And I think this is true.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the social side is where you sort of break through those barriers. We wear a persona when we're doing business. And it's sort of sales and formality. And it can be hard to sort of break through that to get to know the genuine person on the other side. And those shields go down a little bit in these more informal settings. And I think you get a lot more of the real person. So.
Sorry, what I meant to say, because I forgot, lost my train of thought, was that many people actually met very significant serendipitous moments. I mean, I actually met my husband in a Bubbl, and there are a lot of people that even felt relationships in a Bubbl. But at that aside, we ran some Bubbles for South by Southwest the other day. And there were a couple of people that I thought I knew until they bubbled with us. And then I realized I really got to know them. And now they're like, working with Bubbl, like helping us and stuff. And it was super interesting to see that if someone that I'd known for 4 years, I didn't really know them until we just had those breakfast conversations pre-South by, and money can't buy that. So I'm really glad. So maybe can you share with us a little bit about your Bubbl? And then Alexis is going to screen share your Bubbl and what it is and what we're doing at Startup Grind.
Yeah, that's great. Well, a little bit about my experience at Startup Grind. I've actually gone many times when I was in Silicon Valley, but more recently, in the last couple of years, have been going and wearing an investor hat. I think it's a fantastic conference. It's not so big that it's hard to navigate around. They don't have like 14 stages or anything like that. Sort of the one dedicated stage, so you know where to go to get most of the content, a few smaller stages, in breakout areas, and then sort of a relatable, digestible number of startups. So you can kind of come away with, not feeling utterly overwhelmed. And, the past 2 years, we've actually invested in 2 startups, actually both in the MarTech space, both last year and the year prior. So it's been very productive from an investor standpoint, meeting great startups. This year in the Bubbl, we are basically welcoming founders to join us into that Bubbl. We actually have already had 3 great founders committed and a couple more that we're in conversation with. We like to do a really quick screen of them just to make sure, that they're coming to the conference and that, it's a good match in terms of like what they could get out of the Bubbl. But these are definitely like serious founders. They built products. They have a great track record. I've spoken to each one of them. They're really cool and excited about the concept of a Bubbl as well. And I think it serves them in a couple of ways. One of which is, practically speaking, it's kind of finding reasonably priced accommodation at these events, which can be tough. Absolutely. Founders can be cash strapped, so having this help is great. But I think the other part of it is like being around other founders. Again, as I mentioned, this is their peer group, and it's important for founders to stick together, work together, and really kind of compound their efforts by being in this like-minded house. But in terms of the experience, I'm going to be offering up my time to discuss their pitches, their startup decks, their narrative. This is a place that I have a lot of experience with, having worked in organizations like 500 Startups, The Alchemist, and Techstars. And so there's a lot of the same kind of, questions that they're going to get from investors down the line. I'm able to run that by them in sort of a friendly environment, where, critiques will be okay and not have like any big bearing on their investment. But, at some point, investors actually provide very little feedback. So they could be kind of committing some critical mistake in their deck or in their presentation and not even know that until they're 30, 40 meetings in, which would be, really bad. So I'm prepared to like offer that more upfront. And then we're going to be doing some social things as well. We're going to be having a reception the first night as kind of a welcome to Silicon Valley, break a little bit of bread together, hang out to sort of discuss what we're all working on together, the state of funding and a few other core things. And then final night, we'll probably have a dinner in Redwood City, which is where the conference is. That's going to be my treat, buying for everyone. And it would just be a good way to kind of download the final moments of the conference and see how it went for everyone. And also sort of discover a means by which we can all kind of stick together and stay in touch in the future, which I'm almost certain, based on the founders I've talked to, I'm going to want to do.
Amazing, Dan. And as Alexis has been showing, he's just sort of showing the UI a bit here. It's a listing. It kind of looks like Airbnb, but it acts like Luma as well. And a little bit of meetup thrown in, because the idea is that you're able to fully vet these people. And when we say vet or screen, obviously it's a two-way street, but clearly, the important part is you're going to meet with them and they're going to, there is a room for them to stay in and all that sort of stuff. So it's all kind of formal and it's all there in like the hub or the Bubbl, as we say. So I don't know if anyone on the line has any questions, because at the end of this part of all of the live streams, we're going to be taking questions. We don't know how many people have questions, but is there anyone on the live stream that has a question? And I probably should have announced that before, so sorry about that if I didn't. This is our first one. If there's anyone who's got a question, can they put it in the comments now for Dan or for me? And while they're doing that, maybe we'll just talk about, startup grind. I just wanted to sort of share that. So Bubbl's planning to, what we're trying to do is, build a list of conferences and a list of Bubbls for those key conferences, and then partner with some of these communities out there so we can help their people travel together. So stay together, share together is fundamentally like our tagline. So the idea is, if you stay together, you're sharing not just the place, but you're sharing a much bigger experience, as we've been talking about today. Our platform has a lot of things built in, like, ID verification and payments and all these things that, and the way you do the listing and just, user profiles. We didn't talk about that, but as Alexis was scrolling through, we saw, yours is a profile that you completely control what communities you're part of. Oh, yes, we do have something. Is Bubbl something startups at Startup Grind can use? Is Bubbl something? Yes, absolutely, Kenton. Thanks for the question. Can you see that, Dan? I don't know if you can see these, but yes. So we have a page, and maybe Alexis can post the page. We actually have, and this is important, so anyone can post a Bubbl for Startup Grind. We have a page dedicated for that event. We're going to be doing one for the next 20 events. And like I said, we're going to be partnering with communities to get on board as many people interested in this as possible. Yeah. But Alexis, can you just post the link for that page for Startup Grind? So the idea is that with the Startup Grown Conference, anyone can host a Bubbl house or anyone can join. We've already got 4 Bubbl houses. And one of them, interestingly, is a women founders house, which I think is kind of cool because a lot of the time, women want to bubble with. Oh, okay, he's showing it there. He might also put it in the thing. So that's actually what it looks like. So every event will have multiple bubbles, and these bubbles can be themed. So we've got Dan's bubble. We've got Amit's bubble, which he's an IP attorney. He's got an Ask Me Anything. He's going to give some value to founders or anyone that wants to join him about IP law. We've got a women's founders house, and then we've got Annette's bubble, which is in Half Moon Bay. And she's got some interesting things about how you could bubble in Half Moon Bay. Any other questions?
I just wanted to add something, Haley, for anyone that is looking to host a Bubbl. I think a really great one to do is to travel with your fellow countrymen. I know that Startup Grind is fairly international. So, for example, if you're coming all the way from England, maybe you're coming with 3 or 4 startups already. You want a place to be able to all hang together, and then also maybe add on additional countrymen that are coming, so you can broadcast that out on your social that, hey, we're putting together a Bubbl for the UK as part of Startup Grind, and we'd love for you to join us. I've seen that similar concepts work in the past, but not as formalized as Bubbl. I think you've done a better job of this.
So there was a question here from someone called David, and he's asked, where in the platform can you see the specific extra value add benefits that the Bubbl leader that would provide? He said host, but it's actually leaders. For example, in Dan's case, his advice on startup decks or reception dinners. So that's a great question, and we do have that answer. So Alexis, do you want to go into the Bubbl? In the Bubbl listing itself, in the Bubbl, you can list the rooms. So there's 2 places to list these, and then you can list extras. And in the extras section, that's where you can list the activities. And in fact, you can even have bookable activities by the hour. So anyone actually running an event could technically use Bubbl to run their event. If you can scroll down to the activities, that's where we've Dan has listed, review your startup pitch deck. We could make that a little bit more descriptive, Dan. Scroll down, Alexis. So that maybe it's slow to scroll. I don't know. So there is on Bubbl, you can literally position and put anything on Bubbl. They don't have to be things that you charge for. So he's got the pitch review there. And, Dan, maybe you could put the dinner on there. You could just add that to the Bubbl.
Yeah, but I think I ended up putting that, if you go to the very end of experience,
right.
If you go scroll up.
Yeah. Oh, he put it in the as well. Okay.
Yeah, just to describe the experience. I think I mentioned, keep going up. Just a little bit more.
So there's 2 spots you can put
it. Right here. So right there, stop. Yeah, I'm happy to review your pitches, provide fundraising guidance, and look forward to chatting with fellow innovators about their startup. Host a light reception, drinks and snacks in the evening of the 28th. And then finally, hosting an optional dinner on the final night conference. And look, the way that I look at it is the value will become emergent in having these deeper discussions. So, but this is just kind of a framework for us to be able to converse on a little bit of a deeper level. Probably not something you're going to get from just going to the conference itself. Nobody's going to really sit down to do a critique of your pitch. And so I think this is a really good value added thing. If you haven't, and never mind me, just like you should be getting kind of external opinions about your pitch and your startup deck.
And just on that, so Dan, the difference between you having it as an activity, FYI, when they check out, you could track RSVPs. If you wanted to track RSVPs for that, when they check, so whatever's in the bed and the extras, that's what they're going to be offered to select when they check out. And some of that's mandatory and some of it's optional, just FYI. Someone asked a last question, which I think is pretty important. Daniela asked, how safe is the platform? Okay, so Bubbl, obviously, after having run, my ski houses for years, I'm a female solo traveler. We've built into the platform. In fact, we believe that we've built in probably a trust and safety layer that's definitely a great start. So I'm going to share a few things about safety. So the first few things are this, that, and I'm a female solo traveler, so I understand completely. But so we have user profiles that are built into our platform. We have ID verification. So there's a face selfie ID verification check inside the platform. And anyone who's joining a public Bubbl, so that's a Bubbl that is like publicly listed. It's people meeting people they don't know. You have to do the ID verification before you can pay and before you can join the Bubbl, before you can, be confirmed in the Bubbl. That's super important so that, we know who is in the Bubbl. So we have our user profiles where we encourage people to put their social links so people can automatically see how many mutuals, etc. they have and, a bit about who they are. We also have payment through the platform. And so that I think is very, very important. We could have just built a platform without payment, but the reason we did that was because we felt that, part of the value add we can provide. When I was running my ski houses, and I would be like, oh, hey, I'm Haley, blah, blah, blah. You want to join my ski house? Yeah, great. Okay, you're in. Can you send me $1,000? And they were like, huh? What? $1,000? Uh-huh. Who are you? You know what I mean? Like, so that comfort of knowing that it's run through a platform. And then the ratings. So we're about to launch ratings soon. So ratings are very important for two reasons. One, they help everyone have a level set. Two, your Bubbl rating, if we get our job right, is going to be as useful as your Uber rating. And three, it rewards and kind of encourages good behavior. So, the rating is just like a background thing. And, as we evolve it, it'll probably be a way to like help people like become a better bubbler for that matter, because we want it to be very positive. So there were the three things. And then the other thing is in the listing itself, we have these like friendly fields. So we talk about what kind of people would be suitable to bubble together in this bubble. The leader is curating the group. And therefore, it's up to the leader to kind of make sure that the group is curated and, the better leaders will get the better ratings, et cetera, et cetera. So that's some of the things we've built into the platform to start with. And of course, if you, only feel safe, for example, in a women founders house or a women's house, by all means, you only apply to those houses. We have those friendly fields, and set up your own house as well, if that's what you want to do.
And it adds really quick, Haley, that you have the questionnaire at the beginning as part of the application process. So in the case of the startup grindhouse, we're screening everybody to make sure that they are actual attendees. That in this case, there are startups that are either currently raising funds or raising some, funds in the future. And then I'm doing a 15-minute screening call with every person that applies before they get approved, just to make sure that they, fit the caliber of people that we want in the house.
Yeah, and just like Luma, that's why I say it's kind of like Airbnb meets Luma, just like Luma. And I know this from my ski lease days. The questions I always used to ask people to screen, that's built into the platform. And I think ultimately, just as an ending point here, regardless of like the marketplace side of it, the utility tools, when I built the platform, when we built it, 66% of the activities and the actual things I had to do, we simplified or reduced. And that was because there was a lot of things I had to do to connect all the different systems. And so now it's all in one. So hopefully, Dan, it's been okay experience for you to kind of like I don't know what your experience has been like so far of the actual application, but maybe you can share that, or we can talk about that in the next.
Yeah, so it's worked really smoothly. I mean, once everything is set up, that process goes really quick. I just receive a notification that somebody's applied. Using Bubbl, I can see their questionnaire to kind of get a quick background that they provided. And then there's a complete, in-app chat mechanism. So I can message them directly. At this point, we're not communicating over email at all. And I am just setting up a quick screening call. I'm just dropping my Calendly link in there for a quick, 15-minute jam session. And again, that's just to get a sense for that we're all on the same page and everybody's cool. We're really looking for high caliber people in this bubble that are like real entrepreneurs, really raising and dedicated to the concept of what they're doing, not sort of tire kickers, if you will.
Yeah, tag again. And one last thing, I do have one last question from TL's NYC. What about fees? Do we pay all the other platform fee plus your platform? Okay. So I don't know what she means by all the other platform fees. Our platform, how we built Bubbl to start with, at least how we are today, is we charge the traveler for the convenience of showing up. So Dan's doing a lot of work in setting up and running this Bubbl. He's taking a lot of initiative, and he's offering an incredible, opportunity for founders. So the way our platform monetizes is that we get a percentage of it's up to 8%. You get a discount if you pay by ACH of 2%, which is direct debit, so that the credit card, the Stripe fees. We use Stripe as our secure payment processing platform, probably for obvious reasons. And that has like built-in know your customer for leaders and all that sort of thing. So we charge the travelers a fee for kind of the convenience of showing up. So the leader's doing all the work. The leader's doing a great job. If they're doing their job right, they're doing a great job. And so we worked out that, when you join a Bubbl, in general, it's around about a 30% saving up until, it depends on what the Bubbl is, but it can be around not only a monetary advantage, but also obviously the huge connection advantage and the social advantage. So generally speaking, everyone wins on Bubbl. I have a slide in my pitch deck about that. It's generally, 30, it can be up to 40 or 50. It can be like as low as 20%, but they're getting a great deal. So generally speaking, that's how we're monetizing the platform, because It's based on, again, one of our values, which is valued contribution, meaning you value what others contribute and others value what you contribute. And so that is a recognition of both our platform and of your leaders' efforts.
It just occurred to me, I want to make one thing very clear too. Just because I'm leading a Bubbl, there's still going to be no handout at the end looking for any gratuities or anything like that. That is not the idea here at all. I'm not doing it for monetary reasons. This is just purely paying it forward, wanting to meet great founders, other investors, and just improve the entire experience of going to Startup Grind.
Absolutely, Dan. And thank you. And absolutely for pointing that out. Like, we are really thrilled to have Dan, like, experiencing our platform. You're getting, as you say, great quality founders. You're an amazing mentor. The fact that you, like, turned up to my event at Startup at South by Southwest, remember, you turned up. It was a really hot day. And that was, to me, a truly dedicated, like, honestly, mentor, like someone that showed interest in what we were doing at South by. So it was wonderful to meet in person. That's right. We did meet in person, didn't we? Mm-hmm. So thanks again. I have a feeling it's been 35 minutes. So I just want to thank everyone for joining. We'll put in the comments here, like, the link to bubbl.co. If you haven't got it, like, please sign up. We have built-in referral codes and all sorts of things in our platform. Our platform's going to be valuable when more people join and more people participate and give us feedback, etc. So we're excited. And Dan, thank you so much for your time and your interest. And let's bubble, as we say.
Thanks, Haley. I really appreciate it. It's been great to come on and jam with you on Bubbl. I think it's really a great idea, and I hope it catches fire. And I'm definitely looking forward to Startup Grind just that much more.
Well, I'm a star sign, Sagittarius. Therefore, let's hope it does catch fire. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next week live stream. I'll be announcing that shortly, who our guest is. Thanks.